All right, so today I want to kind of talk about something that I've noticed is going on, and I know people who deal with this too. It's a social anxiety disorder, or SAD. What a wonderful name for it, SAD.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Anyway, this is my friend Nick here. He's going to join me and share some of his thoughts about it too. But so I was reading an article today, and the article basically did a study about social anxiety disorder among people aged 16 to 29. And it broke it up by category, by country, by gender, and all that stuff. Overall, over 30% of respondents were above the threshold for social anxiety disorder. And so that's quite alarming. Now, if you don't know what social anxiety is, basically it's like fear of social interactions, or fear of the embarrassment of social interactions, or fear of like being seen a certain way. And it can be very mild, to where you're just kind of shy. You don't really enjoy being in social interactions like that, or it could be much more severe, and in those cases it can actually affect the course of your life. So you don't get up to make the decisions that need to be made because you're afraid of talking to people. You're afraid, okay, what should I wear? What will they think of me if I wear this, that, and the other? And really it's where your life almost gets kind of paused because you're afraid to talk to people that you need to go talk to. And so, in the study, it mentioned that there were major differences between people who were employed and unemployed. It mentioned there were differences between people who lived in the suburbs. Apparently, if you live in the suburbs, as opposed to, within a city or in the rural area, you're more likely to have it. And then also, regionally, it talked about how the most socially anxious group that they talked to was, in the United States, females. Yeah. So, I wanted to think about that, kind of parse through this a little bit. Of course, like unemployed people were more likely to be socially anxious. I mean, what do you think, Nick? To me, that seems almost just like, if you're socially anxious, you're not going to go to the interview, or you're gonna be sitting there revising your resume
Right.
1,000 times, and you're never going to actually submit it because you're afraid what people will think. Oh, should I do this type, this type font? Will they think I'm weird? What do you think about that?
I think it probably goes beyond that. I mean, if between that age range, 16 and what?
And 29.
And 29, you're unemployed, you're living with your parents. I mean, assuming, you can assume that that's probably the case.
Mm-hmm. Out in the suburbs.
Yeah, you're probably
Yeah.
playing video games in your mother's basement, right? I mean, in the suburbs. Suburbs have no community, too. I mean, kids don't play outside these days, You never really had social interaction in that case, And then to break free of that, particularly assuming your parents enabled you to just kind of skate by in that way, that can be very difficult.
So your parents kind of let you skate by like that. Should parents be more cognizant of what's going on, and make them go out and play in the suburbs? Or should they move to the middle of the city where, there's more forced social interaction because you're just closer to people?
That's difficult because in America, we have kind of built our society around suburbs.
Mm-hmm.
For most people, that's what you can afford. And it's not practical, say, to find your rural community or live out in the middle of the city. And not to say that'd be safe anyway these days. But I think what's really important is that parents need to raise their kids properly to, even if maybe in early development they don't have that community. I mean, you maybe don't send your kids public school, and try to find a, homeschooling Christian community. I know a lot of kids where they go into that in kind of like a Christian homeschooling environment, and they are more sociable at a younger age. They act like adults.
Oh, they are?
Oh yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh.
My parents were pretty big into the Church of the Brethren, kind of like Anabaptist.
Oh, okay.
Think Mennonite kind of a community.
Okay.
And they were living in, it was more rural for sure. It was in Maine, but their kids would be like 16 years old, 14 years old, but they'd act like they're 21.
Mm-hmm.
Or even these days, 21-year-olds don't even act 21 anymore. But you get what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
They were very mature for their age because they were raised, I'd say, in a proper sense.
Mm-hmm.
They were incentivized to take responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
They were taught properly by their parents. The public school system in America rewards the least common denominator. The least amount of effort. As long as you get the highest grade, that's fine. And even if you fail these days, they just pass you along.
Oh, yeah.
So I think getting away from that
Mm-hmm.
is a good start if you can. And then on top of that, just encouraging your kid once they get their license, right? Get their permit, and go to work.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, go to work. Yeah, that's right. Because, I guess if you get them up and going when they're 16
Exactly.
to go and work, then when they're 28,
yeah, you don't.
There's already that expectation. It's not
Yeah.
acceptable to just sit around and do nothing. And I imagine, or play video games, like you said, sit around in the basement. Yeah.
I've known people.
Mhm.
I have family
Yeah.
members where their mother, single mother situation, and the mother just said, she never forced him to get a permit, never forced him to get a license,
Mhm.
and so he's older, and he doesn't have.
Oh, he doesn't even have a license?
No.
Oh,
and
my
it
gosh.
doesn't work.
In America?
And so when you're here's the issue.
Yeah.
If you're a parent and you turn and your child turns 26, doesn't have a license, doesn't have a job, it's gonna be very difficult for you because you love your kid.
Mm-hmm.
But it's gonna be very difficult for you to say, you need to go, you need to leave. So you don't want to get to that point. So when they turn 16, you really need to be like, no, you need to go get a job, go get your permit.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't, there'll be consequences, and I think that's really the approach that people who find themselves in that situation, need to take. You can't let it get too far.
Yeah.
That's just my 2 cents.
Interesting.
As a single male.
Something you said there about the responsibility and raising the kids young to have responsibility and to have those expectations. Like, it made me think of if you're raising a kid and you don't even teach them basic manners. Right. You don't teach them that there is an expectation in society. We have certain conventions that you need to adhere to, or people are going to, interact with you in the wrong way.
Right.
Then you never correct those like antisocial behaviors that they might get from just like, if you watch TikTok all day and you just see prank videos with people pulling pranks on each other, but then they laugh it off at the end. You're just gonna be pranking people, and you think, oh, it's just a prank, bro, and then they're like, no, it's not a prank. You just like painted my car a different color and I didn't like it, or whatever crazy stuff people do nowadays. But like that socialization is so important from a young age. I think I think who was it? I used to listen a lot to Jordan Peterson.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I used to listen a lot to Jordan Peterson, and one of the things that he used to say from a psychology and developmental perspective is that if your kid is antisocial, like by the age of 4, there's not really much that you can do about it. Like after that age, it's just like behavior management, because they didn't get the like empathy part of it early on. And so you have to like understand, like, when I talk to you, I can't talk to you in a certain way. There's an expectation. If I'm yelling at you the entire time, you're going to think a certain way of me. And of course, don't overthink it. Don't overthink that. If you fall into that other trap. But like, yeah, man, it's so important to teach kids manners and not just let the internet raise them. Which I guess is a problem that like earlier generations had with like television, because television's been around, for a few generations now. But
that had a time and a place.
Had a time and a place. It turned off after a certain point in time. There was a social expectation. Okay, it's late night TV. Kids go to bed.
Exactly.
Like.
Yeah, my mother was very strict about that.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I can remember vividly It was around the 5th grade. I remember a time when there was dumb phones.
Mm-hmm.
I remember a time when there was smartphones.
Yep.
And the world changed. I didn't notice it at the time, but
Yeah.
I can see it back, looking back at it, the world changed.
There was
How
a shift.
kids acted changed. Oh, it was a huge shift.
Mm-hmm. And the concept of the mono device, of where this one device is going to solve all of your problems, that's new too. Like when the smartphone came in and all of a sudden everything is on the smartphone, like all these different apps and things, you don't need a separate device to be your guitar tuner. Just use your phone. What are you doing?
Exactly.
You know, you don't need a what's another thing? You don't need to go to your bank every day
Yeah.
to deposit your check. You know, just scan it.
You don't need to think about questions anymore. Just ask Google.
Just ask Google. You don't have to think anymore. You don't need an encyclopedia anymore.
You don't need
You
a
don't.
map anymore.
You don't need a separate video game device anymore.
No.
It's all on the phone. You know, and that's, you know, it's wonderful that you can have that convenience with the phone. But then what happens?
Yeah.
You know, definitely some unexpected consequences.
And we're seeing a new generation now. And as a
Mhm.
bus monitor, I see this a lot.
Yeah.
You know, of kids who are being raised with their phone from almost the time they come out of the womb.
Hmm.
You know, they just have that smartphone. They call it the iPad generation.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it's ugly. It's really ugly.
What-
What that does
what-
to a kid.
What kind of like behaviors and like thought processes are you seeing in the kids?
Well, they talk like these internet personalities. It's all like memeing, and it's like it completely changes the social dynamic. I think it prevents maturity within children. I think it really blocks it. I think in some way because you know if you go online for any amount of time, you kind of see the trash. You know, it perverts what social interaction really is. I think that's probably the best way of putting it. And that's not even getting into, I think, what is really the worst part of it all, which is the internet. It points kids in a certain direction, in certain rabbit holes, because there's an algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've seen with a lot of kids is that, particularly in men, but in women it's different. The boys, from a very young age, I mean, like elementary school, they're already addicted to pornography,
Oh yeah.
and that's pretty scary. You know, to be that deep, that in. You know,
Yeah, and that young too. My goodness.
Exactly.
You can't just have an innocent childhood anymore because
that changes you.
Yeah, it really does, man. Oh my goodness. Like,
And you know what you're talking about with like how it perverts social interaction. Maybe that's one of the reasons why the social anxiety is so much higher. Because I read another study that was like 2001, 2003, and it was like in the adult population, it was only like I think 7% social anxiety. In adolescent girls, like age 13 to 18, it was only like 11%. Right, so the more recent study saying over 30%, I think it was like 36% actually, so almost 40%.
Right.
You know, it's gone up over that time, and like you said, the world kind of having that shift with the smartphones and whatnot, and maybe it has to do with that memeing kind of culture. Like people are just meaner now, so you have to be more aware of what you're doing, or
Right.
someone's going to record you, and you're going to be like put online, you know. And everybody's carrying a camera nowadays.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
so you're more conscientious about things. You're probably more fearful also of what people are going to think of you. Not just the people who you know literally like around you, but also just what will the internet say. You know, people you don't even know, people who have no connection to you geographically, relationally. They don't go to your school. They don't go to your work. Like, you know, people are going to have an opinion.
Yeah, and I think the great deception is, and with the girls, by the way, the issue is, I think, the trap they find themselves in is again in the social media. I think that they have a higher proclivity to get deep into that, where they look at what they see online, and they want to form this story, this false story, a narrative about their life, and to really like make it look like their life is, you know, like the Disney princess, you know. That's been my observation, and you'll see it. You walk around, and you look at
Mhm.
the people who you're around, how glued they are to their devices.
Yeah.
It's like
And
every second.
I guess if you don't shape your own narrative
Yeah.
on your social media feed for other people, then either someone's going to do it for you,
Absolutely.
whether you just get taken pictures of or videos or whatnot, or you're just going to be irrelevant.
Yeah.
No one's going to know anything about you. You're not important because you're not talked about online. And that's sad,
That could
because
be a
you
good
are
point.
important. You are important. Tell them, Nick.
Tell 'em
Yes,
that-
yes. Well, I think that could be a good thing though, not having an online presence.
Yeah.
Like that's that's the goal. I don't know.
As we say on a YouTube channel. Funny. But
That's true. That's true. There's some irony in that.
yeah. But I mean there's some good things with the internet too, there's
Oh, yeah.
there's goodness to be had on there and wholesomeness, but you've got to find it and you've got to create it. So but well, thank you so much for talking with me
Yeah,
about
anytime.
social anxiety. I hope if you have social anxiety that you can work through it and try to have less worse symptoms. Sorry. But yeah, so I think that's about it. Adios.